Good morning and welcome everybody. We are very, very happy to welcome you this morning to this session dedicated to seeds of collaboration and more specifically strong partnerships, French and African partnerships on food systems that will highlight great initiatives that create values, growth, resilience on the African continent. My name is Nashwat Megouar. I'm the Managing Director of the French-African Foundation, and we would like to thank the Paris Peace Forum and the UMCSP for hosting us today and co-organizing this session. I would like also to thank our speakers this morning, among which Patrick Dupoux, who is the Head of Social and Environment Impact at Boston Consulting Group, who will participate and moderate the session. We have the privilege to have also Adeline Lescan, who is the CEO of Nutri-Set, Christian Stamqueta, the President for Africa, Middle East and Asia for Danone, Jennifer Barn, the Head of Partnership at AGRA, Huda Boukari, who is not only one of our young leaders of our last cohort at the French-African Foundation, but also the Head of Procurement at Unilever. Just a few words about the foundation before we start, and I give the floor to our speakers. The foundation was created in 2019, and it aims at promoting new generation of African leaders and French leaders with positive impact in all fields. Our last cohort, the 2023 cohort, actually gathered more than 5,000 applicants from all over Africa and also from France. And this cohort worked on a white paper, a manifesto, to promote excellence on French and African partnership, and more specifically on food systems. So today, we're going to speak about these initiatives, but also concrete ideas that we can actually promote to support this field. So thank you very much, and I give the floor to Patrick.
Thank you, Nashwat. And first of all, thanks for organizing this session, and also congratulations to your leadership on the French-African Foundation, because I think you have created a lot of momentum around the foundation, and I think Danone, ourselves, and others are proud partners of the foundation, because what you do, we believe, makes sense to create bridges and give also a positive spin in the relationship between French and African leaders, and celebrating the successes and the win-win cooperation. So thanks for that. So we are going to talk about collaboration in the agri-food systems. So obviously agri-food is one of the key themes of the Paris Peace Forum, especially here at UM6P, given what UM6P and OCP role in Africa in the agri-food systems. We have a different set of speakers who all represent various stakeholders. So the what we call the off-takers, or the food companies. Nutri-Set has a key role in specific food to fight against stunting and malnutrition, especially for the kids. And then Jennifer represents AGRA. I guess everyone knows AGRA, leading organization in promoting the development of the agri-food system in Africa. So just before giving and asking to our speakers to introduce themselves, also the actions of their organization in the agri-food systems in Africa, we think it's super relevant theme. We personally believe that the development of the African agriculture is probably the #1 priority globally for SDGs. So the dollar that is put in the agri-food systems in Africa is probably the best dollar invested in the SDGs in the world, whatever continent, whatever topic, because basically it's the only one which addresses all SDGs. So climate mitigation, climate adaptation, nutrition, poverty reduction, gender. So all the SDGs are addressed by the agri-food value chains in Africa. And this is where we should concentrate a lot of both development, private investment, and public investment money. Unfortunately, we are very far from that. I think except Ethiopia, which I understand is represented in this room. I think very few African countries have complied with the CADEP targets of 10% of public investments in the agri-food value chain. And it's no surprise, I think Lionel Zinsou mentioned it earlier, that the countries who have invested the most in the agri-food value chains in Africa have also those who have had the highest GDP growth rate in the last 15 years. So I will start with you, Adeline. So Nutriset is one of the most impactful unknown company I know. So no one knows about you, but actually you are one of the most positively impactful company in the world. So can you tell us about what you do and also the impact that you have?
Thank you very much. Yes, we are working on product to treat malnutrition. So we've got really 3 different branches. The first one is doing research. So we were the company that invent RUTF, plum peanuts. So the first product to treat acute malnutrition today, and from that we develop a full range of products to treat different type of malnutrition, but also stunting, and trying to be more active in nutrition for specific time in your life. We believe that the best way is to eat correctly, to have access to diversified food, and to have an agriculture that provides this food. But during the time of the year, sometimes you've got the lean season, during the time of your life, you need some specific product when you are pregnant, when you are elderly, when you are ill with some disease as malaria or cancer, who need specific nutrition. So in terms of research, we work really on that with international institutions worldwide. After we do production, and for production, we really work on a high quality level, but we are really focusing on programmatic countries. So we've got the historical factory in the north in France, answering the big demand for war, Gaza, Yemen, specific place. But since 24 and 26 in Ethiopia, we develop a network of local producers in programmatic country, because we believe that, and that is our third activities, but we believe that fighting malnutrition is not only giving a product that's good, that save life, but we know it's too late, but it's really to develop the local economy, and so that's what we know how to do. So we are based in Ethiopia. We were in Sudan where the factory burned during the war, but in Madagascar, in Nigeria, in a lot of countries where there is a need for the product. And our main topics today will be to work more on value chain and agriculture, and how we make sure we are able to valorize the local agriculture in our factory.
And how many people do you, in a way, help feeding through your... Is it main food, or is it complement to nutritious complement?
I would say that RUTF is kind of medication where really you treat a product, and all other product is supplementation.
And how many people, and mostly kids, are being touched by your product?
I would say that worldwide, maybe 20 million are reached by product coming from our research, and 10 million from our partnership group of factories.
And so your main clients are mostly what? Your World Food Program, UNICEF, others?
Yes, the UN, UNICEF, or WFP, depending on the years. So, but we try to work more and more directly with the government through World Bank money or through different international institutions. But we believe that if we want to prevent malnutrition now, we need to work more with the government, and to be a tools to implement local nutrition policy and to reach customers.
Thank you. No, so as I was saying, one of the probably the most positively impactful unknown company in the world, because as I said, there are so many corporations who do little and communicate a lot, and you do a lot and don't communicate that much. So that's great to hear.
I have to say that we've got our communication manager here.
No, I mean you do a great job. You do a great job. So at a time of green and social washing, it's better to communicate little, but to live by your
But just
purpose.
one point on that, it's because also locally we want the name of our partners being first and not our name. So maybe you know Helena and Rich Food, and country per country, the name of our partners are more known than our name.
Okay, we have a say which is growing by growing others. I think it's a good example. So, similarly impactful, but more famous, Danone. So Danone, you also have a big impact in Africa. You're historically one of the most impactful company in the agri-food business in Africa, and I would say one of the most impactful French company in Africa. So can you just remind us quickly where are your main operations and what is your role in the broader agri-food systems in the countries you operate in Africa?
So yes, very happy to be here, and thank you very much for the invitation. Danone, has a long history working in Africa. Many people know, obviously, and connect Danone primarily with yogurt, right? But we're not just about yogurt. We're in specialized nutrition, so we're in infant nutrition, we're in adult nutrition, and in many countries, we're also in water, which is very important. We operate, obviously, our businesses, but we're also working with a tool which is called Ecosystem Fund, where we're really trying to develop, kind of sustainable food chains, both in water, but also in nutrition. That is absolutely critical for us. Now, if we look at the operation in Africa, we have two big businesses. One, starting with dairy, what we call dairy, so yogurt, milk, very big, for example, here in Morocco. We operate, directly in countries like Morocco, Egypt, Algeria, in West Africa. We have factories in Nigeria, in Ghana, and then in South Africa. But we also work through partnerships, joint ventures with strong local players, like in Kenya is Brookside. A smaller one in Senegal is Laiterie du Berger. We have Delis in Tunisia. So we're also really kind of incorporating partnerships, serving roughly 500 million consumers every day in more than 25 countries.
In Africa?
In Africa.
500 million in Africa?
Yes.
Okay.
So what is important for us, we believe that agriculture, in particular dairy farming, obviously is very local and has to be very local because it's one of the most valorized agricultural value chains. And already today, roughly 80 to 85% of the milk we use on the African continent comes from, local farmers, right? So we, work, including our joint venture partners, with 200,000 farmers, majority smallholder farmers on the African continent, collecting milk. One of the big, challenges, of course, is how do you make, in times of climate change, the system much more resilient. The cows, having dairy farming is very sensitive. We all don't remember it, but for a cow to give milk, she needs water, she needs, to be fed, she needs good quality feed. And that's absolutely important that we help smallholder farmer transition to, more climate resilience in a way that is, on the one hand, impacting CO2, so that is also more sustainable, but on the other hand, it needs to be more efficient, right? So it needs to be more cost efficient, it needs to give a better livelihood to the farmers, it needs to have more income to the farmers, and that's what we're working on. So we're transforming, dairy farming in Morocco, for example. In Algeria, we have programs that we set up, touching 8,000 farmers so far, to help them really transition into the new realities that they're facing every day because of the sensitivity that it has. And that's something which we're really passionate about because in the mid and long run, it will only work, if we can truly localize, farming, and make Africa, the food chain of Africa, self-sufficient in a kind of sustainable but also cost-efficient way. So that's what we're very passionate about, that's what we're partnering for, that's where we have a lot of knowledge. And I think that's something that we're trying to drive forward. And just simple example to give, and then I stop, is if you want to make things affordable, we're selling products in Nigeria, our entry products is 50 naira, right? Is a frozen dairy product. It's impossible to continue to offer, healthy, fortified nutrition at entry price level if we don't localize the supply chain, right? Because if it's fully dependent or very much dependent on hard currency importation, it doesn't work. But it's sometimes, difficult, because even if you want to buy, soy protein, right, that is made from soybeans, today the soybeans are there, but the processing is not there. So, basically, if I want to buy at a high quality at scale, I basically need to buy the soy protein in Europe that is made from the soybeans that are coming out of, West Africa sometimes. So localizing, also processing with partners is going to be absolutely critical.
Great, thank you. And I will actually move to another apparently newly appointed French company, Unilever. I didn't know it was French, but we, by extension, will say that it's part of the Franco-African partnership. So Unilever, your role, Uda, is actually to localize, right? Or to localize production and sourcing of your products, of Unilever products on the continent, right? Maybe you can say a few words.
Yes, so it's good morning, everyone. Thank you. I'm really happy to be here. So it's part of my role to work on localization of most of the products we have. Because in reality, when you have a manufacturing industry, it's really critical to have most of the raw material you use and even packaging materials to be local. Because it doesn't make sense to import 80%, 90% of the process you came to transform. You couldn't be profitable, you couldn't have an affordable product. So the main role for me is to make sure that we localize the product, we have the more affordable product for the community we serve when we have the production base, but also we create jobs and we create opportunity in the same countries. And it's really critical in our economy in West Africa, especially, and also in East and Southern, because of the dependency we have on hard currency. So in most of the country right now, we are facing, as Christian mentioned, the devaluation of the FX. And having the local power of the consumer not increasing, it's really important that they have less dependency on hard currency. Because importing in dollars or euro in our continent can also increase inflation in the market on the food product and even the non-food one. But it's more critical for the food product because now most of the community couldn't afford nutrition foods. Because when the price increase on the food material, we go mostly when the less good product in terms of nutrition, and then we have over disease, over issue coming. So really, localization is really key for me.
And what is the share of your overall portfolio, which obviously is very big for Unilever, that is sourced locally? I mean, if you take West Africa, for example, versus imported from Europe or other geographies. Is it like 90% is sourced locally? How much?
Okay, I'm really happy to say that right now we are above 75% of the product we source locally. So we come from a long journey for several years working on that. We are really key story like one in Nigeria of localization of the sorbitol from cassava. So we have a lot of opportunity. We need to think differently to be able to achieve that. So we run long-term projects and we have higher aspiration to move ahead of that. But in West Africa, I think we are one of the first regions where we crossed the 75%.
And that was less 10 years, 20 years ago?
I will say even 8 years ago, so I joined the company in 2016. It was less when I joined.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
So Jennifer, you are representing the broader, how would you call that, DFI, donors, international cooperation ecosystem to that? How do your role is to orchestrate all those stakeholders, public, private, and and push for the development of the agri-food systems. What is your take on how this is? Because we hear positive stories about more localization on the agri-food system. Is it something that you see, that you promote? What are the obstacles?
Yes, of course, and thank you for being here. So few things. If I can be so bold and look to my left and my right, we are your partner in localizing value chains in Africa, now and going forward. And why is that? Let me just take a step back and describe both the spirit of how AGRA was formed and what it is that we do. So AGRA was established as an inspiration by the late Kofi Annan, who turned his frustration about the fact that the Green Revolution that revolutionized agriculture and food systems in South America and Asia seemed to have skipped Africa. So he convened several partners, and we also know that people like Akina Desina were very critical to the establishment of AGRA. And of course, in its first year of being, AGRA was a catalyst who focused on fixing seed systems, companies, researchers, the environment of the farmers, and working with governments to make that happen. But we went on a journey, like actually many of you, realizing that if you want to transform food systems in Africa, you almost have to push every button in the elevator to make it work. And that changed our organization. Nowadays, we're an institution that is focused on supporting governments and working with partners to make food systems work. We work across 12 countries, now moving into actually 15, almost 17 countries. We have a reach of 28 million farmers, reaching 3,000 SMEs, with the sole mandate of making sure that when it comes to staple crops, Africa is food secure, that we have an enabling environment that facilitates the growth of the private sector, but also that we create 1.5 million jobs for youth and make sure that it is equal in terms of gender, people with disabilities, etc. So our aspirations align with many of you, but how can we make it happen? Firstly, in the spirit, wherever you see impatience about the challenges that face Africa's food systems, passion to make it happen, technical expertise, every optimism, being optimistic of where this continent is heading, but also action-oriented, there's very likely that there's an AGRA person in the room to catalyze and help you to make it happen. That's the spirit in which you were established. But then how do we make it happen? We help to improve and build systems. So when it comes to still seed systems where we originated, but also deploying a whole toolkit of sustainable farming methodologies, working together to build markets, structured markets around smallholder farmers. How do farmers actually get their produce to your primary processors, finally to your factories? That's where we have developed the expertise and can support you in structuring that, but also working with financial institutions, because we do know it's a very complex and layered infrastructure to make value chains work. And also lastly, what is the political economy and the enabling environment? Are government deploying the right policies in time? To what extent is that a predictable environment? We work with governments hands-on, not just in terms of pointing fingers that this is what you do wrong, but also in supporting building capacity within governments on a national level, but also regionally with the AUC, the African Union Commission. When you talk about CADEP, the Malabo Declaration, our technical experts will be there behind the scenes to support implementation and tracking of all of that. So what is my view on all of this? The aspirations of governments and companies to make Africa more food secure are not new. And I'm really happy with the recent revival and focus to make that happen. But we need to think about different approaches, because the challenges and the urgency is even higher than it was 10 years ago. Climate action, population growth, which actually should be a positive in the context of where the world is heading, create both opportunities and challenges. So what is critical from my end? Number one, we need to acknowledge the complexity of making this happen. Because when I moved from banking into the development world 15, 20 years ago, these aspirations were also there. but we hit a plateau. And that had to do with a few factors. How we work together, how we collaborate together in order to mitigate some of the risk and the challenges in our value chains. We need to structure and design value chains all the way from the research in terms of seeds, the input that goes into farms, all the way to actually how the logistics, the services, and technology is applied. So my perspective on all of this is, can we change the way how we work together? Can we co-design? And secondly as well then, how do we mobilize more investments into the sector, public and private, both from the government commitments, DFIs, but also what support is it that you require to scale your businesses and work together with your African partners? I'd like to leave it at that so we can discuss a bit more.
Okay. No, thanks. The difficulty in the agriculture, in the agri-food value chain, is that it's never the same. You know, in the country A and country B, it's not the same. So in Ethiopia, you have ATA that, you know, is very centralized, you know, and that has been very successful. But then you don't have the equivalent of ATA in other African countries. So sometimes the lead may be an off-taker, like Danone takes on the value chain, and or in other countries it may be the government. In another country it may be, well, the World Food Program in case of emergency. So it's very difficult to actually have a one-size-fits-all approach. How do you, for you, what are the learnings in terms of how do you make sure that, you know, this coordination is not a nice and inefficient coordination, but that it's an efficient coordination, impact-driven, with clear mandate, and in every coordination you need to have a bit of a leader, right, in the ecosystem. So what are your learnings about that? And I will go to the others after.
Yes, absolutely. A few things. One is having boots on the ground, being present in countries with our programs, with our engagements, etc. B is the type of relationship you have with the local government on different levels. Being a partner in flagship design, what are the aspirations to mobilize investments, but also supporting the building of capacity. Another aspect also has to do with literally putting your money where your mouth is. We design programs, we implement programs that help to improve the ecosystem and support partners like this basically to make sure that we have increased yield, increased technology, and that farmers can supply the volumes and the values that are required. Another learning is also building strategic relationships with critical partners. A strategic relationship with Danone, Unilever, or Nutriset would also mean that we're not just there for transactional program interventions, but we're there also to look at what will be your strategy in the next 5 years. Where do you want to be, and where can we be a partner in that, either advisory or implementation? Agriculture requires a long-term vision. And it's often very challenging for governments who have like 5 years towards every election to have that focus, and often also DFIs. So you need partners on the ground like us who understand that, who bring the technical expertise to the table. That's also critical in designing a long-term vision. And lastly, embrace the complexity. We are often also designed to maybe just look at one part of the problem and resolve it, as institutions like an AGRA, a foundation, or NGO in this field. Think global and act local, in a sense that it's a broader and complex ecosystem, even if you are only the solution to part of it, and acknowledge that and partner with others to make that happen.
Christian, for example, you work with in different countries. Each of them has a different institutional, sectoral reality. Is it you always have the same approach to building the ecosystem and the partnership with the local farmers for the sourcing of milk and so on, or you need to adapt? Are there learnings? Is there a winning model?
No, I think you have to adapt also based on the reality of the country. So if I go to South Africa, for example, dairy farming is a long-standing tradition. There's a lot of medium-sized farms, large farms with relatively good yields, because that's important. While you come here to Morocco, you go to Algeria, you have a lot of smallholder farmer. And smallholder farming is absolutely critical also from an employment point of view, from a social point of view, and protecting that. So you really have to adapt, to the reality and understand also what is, on the country agenda. For Morocco, it's absolutely, and I think Morocco is doing a fantastic job, but it's absolutely important to protect smallholder farming as an employment sector, which is critical. So, and if I want to be understanding that, I need to also understand what creates livelihood for a farmer, right? Because a smallholder farmer is not just one that has 3 cows. He also has some crops. He also may have some maize. He will have different elements. But the cow for him is absolutely critical. Why? Because it's daily cash, right? Because basically having milk means I have daily cash. Whereas if I plant seeds, I need to wait a couple of months for the harvest. I will not exactly know if the harvest will be very good or will be bad, or depending on the rain or whatever. So it's much less predictable. And for us, understanding that this is all connected, right? Is connected to access to feed, etc., is important. Now, if we want to transition that and that's the complexity, transitioning large farms in Europe, transitioning large farms in the US to more sustainable, practices, the regional agriculture practices, is easier than transforming a lot of smallholder farmers, right? In terms of education, they don't have access to loans, right? When they basically need to have more climate resilient cows, right? Different genetics of the cows, if they need access to different feed that they plant. So how do you enable those hundreds of thousands or millions of farmers to be part of the transition, and that will need access to loans, it will need access to grants, but it will also need access to making sure that there is a continuity of demand. If they basically invest in cows with better yield, that someone is collecting the milk from them. And that system today, I think, is moving very, very slow. I think, we talk with a lot of partners, we talk with banks, we talk with public institutions like USAID or the EU. Everyone today recognizes the importance, but moving from discussing to really impacting, it's still way too slow. We don't have that amount of time, in other ways, because we will sit here again in 3 years and in 5 years and said, okay, we talk about the same thing. So for us, one of the key elements, and that's why we're also talking, is, and you were mentioning going into action, how do we get into action? And I think for us, being a company, we know the demand of the consumer because that's where it starts, right? We need to produce products that the consumer want. So I can take the demand, I can do things with it, but building the upstream faster in a resilient way, we absolutely need to speed up very, very fast if we want to make it happen.
And Adeline, if we talk again about the localization of the production of your product, how do you decide who are your partners in localizing the production in African country? Because your role is critical, but if I play a bit the devil's advocate, a lot is produced still in Europe, so it could be challenge about, how do we make sure you play a role not only on the demand side, on the nutrition side, but also on the supply side. So how do you try to develop local production in Africa to also create jobs, autonomy and resilience?
Usually we first decide about the country where we need to go in terms of programs and in terms of need for children or nutrition. Also a country where the government wants to implement a nutritional policy, so we go there. And after we've got a very strict processes on how to audit and in fact, it's just because we meet people. We never respect our processes. We very often go with a family business. We are a family business. We like this idea of long-term view. We like the idea of a daughter taking the lead from their father. We are very good at that. So usually we meet people that want to do something. They all have a lot of competencies. some weakness. So after we do a very precise audit at this time to understand where we should be as a support and where they can bring their knowledge to the full network. So it's kind of process, but also meeting with people.
Great. So now I will move to one of the output of the promotion of the young French-African leaders, which produced a white paper that was given to the two sponsors of the promotion, President Kagame and President Macron. Three themes were chosen, among which the food systems, which I think is a good sign of the other two were AI and education. So I think it shows how high food systems are in the overall agenda for the young leaders. The young leaders identified 5 priorities for joint actions in food systems. One is regenerative agriculture. Another one is diversity with the development of African orphan crops. The third one was to scale up investments and innovation in agri-tech, including with the use of AI. Another one was the local transformation. We touched about this. How do we develop agro-industries? And the fifth one was around the demand side. So how do you have a full end-to-end value chain approach, including nutrition, but also how do you promote African production in Africa, but also in the rest of the world to create demand pool. Do you want to illustrate how you are acting on one of these 5 levels? First of all, do you think they are the right ones, the 5 priorities, and do you want to give maybe an illustration? Is one of the 5, maybe Huda, do you want to start?
Yes, I will start with the one on transformation. As a young leader, I work on this paper. And the idea around the transformation, the local transformation, is also for us to create a new product for the local communities, for them to get access to have a more nutritious food. So the example I can give is the transformation of, I will make 2 examples. The first one will be cassava. So with cassava, with one of the cheapest, more nutrition foods, we can do a lot. We can be able to produce a lot of derivatives who are main product in our local consumption, like acheke in Côte d'Ivoire, like banku in Ghana, and over region we have a lot of derivatives of food we can make. And the local transformation with local players can help them first to create food products, but also create byproducts for them to generate more profit and be profitable and improve also the yield by more investments. So the example of cassava will be to create, as I say, the byproduct for food, but also fuel, and also derivative for industry like sorbitol for personal care. So it can be one of the examples.
So it's an example in both the transformation, but also the diversity, like promoting the African crops.
Exactly, exactly.
Okay, maybe any Christian, maybe on Regen Ag, right?
Yeah, I can.
And
I can
maybe
talk
on Regen Ag, I would have a question because there are lots of debate about how do you define regenerative agriculture. Is it European standards? Is it? Do we need to have specific definitions for Africa?
I think what is behind the name, I think applies probably also to Africa. Then how you make it happen is have to be different. And for me, one thing that is very important, in Europe, a lot of times, or in the US, when we talk about Reg Ag, we talk about higher cost. When we come to Africa, we need to make sure that applying regenerative agriculture and to see that as an opportunity to increase yields. I'm coming back. On average, a cow in Africa gives, 1 8-liter, of a smallholder farmer, 1 to 8 liters, with a very high methane footprint compared to Europe. Because in Europe, a cow is like 35 liters, 40 liters, you have some 45 liters. So that's a big, big step change, right? And it's a big step change in terms of the yield of the cow. It's a big step change in terms of the available income to the farmer. It's a big step change also on climate impact. But of course, then you have to build the feed system accordingly. You need to make sure that you have water access. But I believe that regenerative agriculture in Africa is kind of a way to drive cost-effective agriculture that also benefits the farmer. Because if the farmer doesn't make enough money, and that's what we've seen, in Morocco 2 years ago with the drought, when all of a sudden 30% of the cows were culled. The farmer needs to make money. If the farmer cannot make enough money, he cannot send his kids to school. Nothing will happen. Education will fail. The farmers will move into the big cities. We need to understand that. I have discussions sometimes with the EU politicians. We're funding a lot of, EU is funding a lot of infrastructure programs in Africa, connecting villages to the internet, which is all nice. But I said, okay, but what is the employment footprint in a village? It's farming. If we don't make farming something sustainable, attractive, also for the next generation, you don't need to connect the village because they're not going to stay there, right? So that's something which for me is absolutely critical. But we need to get, and that's why I think what the team has written here, promote high-yield, resilient, adaptive production system, the nice HIRAP acronym. That's exactly it. It needs to be high-yield.
Adeline?
Yes.
I cannot agree more, by the way.
I will give you the example of one project we have internally at Nutriset. One of the main raw materials for IUF till the beginning are peanuts, and also because peanuts are available in the country where we are, so since the beginning we were thinking about this local production. Few years ago, WHO and UNICEF decide new specification for the product in terms of omega-6 and amino acid. That is really, really important. We fully support this new specification for children. But we realize that using the local peanuts in the whole Africa, we won't be able to reach this specification, which means that our main local raw material was not anymore available locally from 1 year to the other. So we start to work on a project called VAMP to find the good genetics of these high oleic peanuts, working with American universities that has this genetic, but we need 3 years to replicate to be sure that it will still be high oleic and with this specific amino acid. So I speak about this project with a lot of humility because today we are at the second year. It's a little Nutriset project. We are not known, but even internally this project is not known. We need support because now we will need a seed grower so maybe we can speak about this project because I don't know how to scale up the project. But if we manage to do it, it means that we will manage to have the raw material for our factory in Africa, but also we can imagine to offer the high nutritional value peanut for children eating the peanut all day long with the good level of omega-6. So maybe it can have more impact than only being the raw material for the factory, but having the good nutritional peanuts in the field. But with humility, because we don't know how to reach the second step.
Well, then you already have a topic to discuss with Jennifer.
Absolutely. Great ideas coming from the youth. I'd like to add or reflect on it from two perspectives. One is the last mile delivery to the farmer, and the second is investments. Why last mile delivery to the farmer? Irrespective of the technology, the innovation, the investment, it's the business model that delivers it to the farmer, meaning it available, affordable, accessible, that will be transformative. African farmers still have to travel too far and long away to have access to seed fertilizer technology. It's still a big challenge to link to structured markets like the ones that you're offering. So as AGRA, we have dedicated ourselves to improve that whole ecosystem around the farmer. We work with village-based agents to cover the last mile to make sure that inputs are accessible and that farmers are trained. We work on the other end of the farm gate on building structured markets. Plus, we work sideways to make sure that financial services, digital innovation, mechanization, etc., can reach farmers. And we have to build a whole infrastructure value chain around that. Farmer service centers, village-based advisors, and etc. And it's very critical that we innovate, implement, co-design around that last mile. Because if we don't cover that, our economies will develop in isolation of our rural areas, and that is not the way we would want to go. So that's one. The second is investment. We have a $40 billion investment gap in Africa, and I'm happy that the youth basically pointed that out. How do we get more investments into the sector? 3 areas I would like to really flag. One is the cost of capital, which is partly driven by bigger macroeconomic issues such as borrow rates, etc., and also government expenditures that we have to put on the table if we want to solve agriculture. The second is, what do we do to mitigate risk across the value chain? And partly by collaborating and working with partners like ourselves, we can fix some of that fragmentation and risk. But in general, managing risk becomes important. And 3 is really innovative finance. From blended finance to insurance, how do we get some of these tools into our markets, making also use of technology that can sometimes help to address some of the data issues, etc., and the fragmentation. So it's, once again, a bigger play. Every small problem, also that our farmers face, is connected to a bigger ecosystem issue.
Great. So I think we still have 10 minutes. Maybe there are any questions from the room. I think we have a mic here. Don't be shy. There is a question. One here.
Out of curiosity, so you had to shift to import of nuts because of those specs, which is kind of, you know...
We have some discussion with UNICEF right now, but
okay,
we will need...
Okay.
In some countries,
no, because otherwise it's a pity just to, in the meantime, to move to import.
I don't know if it's a pity, because it's really important for development of brain and cognition.
And you
for
cannot
children.
Complement with other.
So
you cannot complement.
No, there is too much omega-6. So
Okay. Now it's just.
But I know it's very difficult to have the choice to do the choice.
Excuse me, if you don't mind, can I speak in French, or is it complicated for you?
Il n'y a rien de mal à parler en français.
Non, parce que la question est un peu pointue, donc je vais essayer de le faire en français, ça va être plus simple pour moi. J'ai une question à la fois pour Madame Lescane et pour Monsieur Stamkouter. Comment vous faites pour dealer entre le business de Danone, qui est de faire du lait en poudre, et la nutrition de la mère qui veut que plus on donne du lait maternel, mieux c'est pour l'enfant?
So, how do you deal with the, I would say, the trade-off or of powder milk, but also promoting voilà.
Breastfeeding.
Yeah, breastfeeding.
So obviously, I mean, is a question we're often asked. First, we're absolutely convinced, and is a conviction for everyone. And I started 20 years in the specialized nutrition part of Danone, that breast milk is the best by far. Right, is a miracle of nature. You know, when you look at how breast milk is adapted, kind of to the needs of a child at the very different stages of its development, it's a true miracle, and that's why we're running a lot of programs in supporting and educating around the benefit of breastfeeding. So we don't see, what you call powder milk and breastfeeding. We're not competing with breast milk. We're fully supporting and embracing breast milk. We're complementing. And what do I mean when we say we're complementing? There's, mothers that have difficulties in breastfeeding. There's mothers that for certain reasons, decide after a certain time to stop breastfeeding because they need to go back to work, or at least to partially stop breastfeeding. And for us, it's very important that at this moment, we offer kind of the next, or the best alternative to it, right? With the right nutritional profile, with the right micronutrients that allow, kind of the children to progress. But that's what for us is very, very important, you know, that we don't compete with breastfeeding. And we have a lot of programs that we run to, you know, truly drive breast milk, you know, and the education around why it's beneficial, you know, with midwives, with nurses. Much more, in many countries, much more than other NGOs are doing, you know, to really support it. And I think that's, for me, is absolutely fundamental, and we're really committed to that.
I don't know, Adeline, if you also address the young mothers' specific needs in terms of nutrition.
Yes, we've got a range of product for the 1,000 days, but in fact we've got product for pregnant and lactating women till children at 6, and after 6 we've got product 6 months old. We've got product for children to supplement because in the nutritional community we can't do something else, and because it is what is supposed to be the best. But I have to say that if we were more courageous, we know that even for children less than 6, in some specific situation, they need product. And knowing that a lot of researchers are not working on that because they are less than 6 and it's like the evil and we are not allowed. But I think some research are needed for these children also. But today it's not in our range of products, so it's not a question.
So less than 6?
6 months old.
6 months old, okay. Because there are some deficits in some specific nutrients?
There is some disease, we are a lot of countries in war, displaced people, etc. So some moms are not able to feed their children and to breast milk their children today. And so we give, in our humanitarian field, we give to the children products that are for more than 6 months old because we refuse to work on this specific age.
Okay, I think there was a question here.
And by the way, we have, for example, even in Nigeria, we have developed a project together with the Gates Foundation, which is Fun Prime. So how do we also secure that for pregnant moms and lactating moms, they have the right, you know, kind of nutrients, you know, because if you are iron deficient as a mom, as a pregnant mom, there's a very high likelihood that your baby is going to be preterm. Your baby will have difficulties in absorbing iron later in life, so his ability to, you know, kind of absorb it. So we need to make sure that there's awareness around it with doctors, and we do a lot of education in this part, because iron deficiency anemia is widely spread. 60% of children, up to 60% in Africa have it. And if we don't work really on awareness stage, you know, already at pregnancy, you know, with doctors, with moms, that you intervene, because it's not so difficult in principle. You know, there is a massive impact on the children's both physical and cognitive development later in life. You know, kids that will have difficulties to become part of what the future workforce of Africa will need. The same with stunting, you know, which you're working on, which we're working on. It's a massive challenge today that we are sometimes, you know, not taking care of, and I wish sometimes we get a little bit less ideologic, to also your point, to really make sure we do the right thing for the future generations.
Just because I want to continue on that, if you want to work with the private sectors and to develop a business, you need to work on pregnant and lactating women. We always speak about first food, infant food, but it's too late. Once the baby is born, once the baby is 6 months old, it's too late. So we really need to focus on proposition for pregnant and lactating women.
There's a question there. Yeah.
Thank you first for the talk. It was very insightful. Okay. My question is for Madam Jennifer. You spoke about small-scale farmers. And here in Morocco, especially, we are in a need for a sustainable solution for small-scale wheat farmers, as we rely heavily on wheat. Maybe especially we have, for the 3 meals, there is always bread in the table. So and the problem with these farmers are when the next campaign, the next agriculture campaign, they find it difficult to finance their, their agriculture season, and to find seeds, to finance fertilizer and all of that. So what is maybe the best intervention for that? Is it by maybe with a financial education program, like how to manage, how to find best investment, manage their debt? And because when they don't find money for their agriculture campaign, they will go for debt. And then when they will go for debt, the next year when they're gonna sell their crops, it will raise in price, especially because we don't have something like it's called market contract. So there isn't always an intermediary between us as a customer and between the farmers as sellers. And what is the best intervention? Is it by financial education or maybe financial aid directly? Thank you.
Thank you for that question. I think very important. It's difficult to state what the best solution is because it's dependent on so many different factors: the value chain, the situation, the strength of other market players in the value chain, etc. However, if I look at the work that we do, that problem is actually quite common across Africa, and unfortunately we don't work in Morocco. But we have worked on different solutions, often collaborating with other actors in the value chain. For example, if we're able to structure a market with leading off-takers who can guarantee off-take, that makes it then easier to work with input providers and then also financial institutions to create a closed loop and therefore provide pre-financing to farmers. Given that there is not always contract farming, but a guaranteed off-taker who's willing to actually work with a certain farmer community. It also depends on the level of aggregation and cooperation of farmers. So there are many factors and interventions that in a specific either geographic region or a value chain that we can deploy in terms of having different actors work together to reduce literally the credit risk of farmers and therefore make it more attractive for them to be funded. One of the challenges that we've seen, not only just with AGRA, but also other actors, is once you have a successful intervention programs, work with critical actors together, how do you scale? That has been really for the past 5 years the challenge in terms of scaling many of these models and also replicating them. And I think part of the solution is to increasing the collaboration, for example, with some of the partners that we see here, and happy to talk to you about the potential of our institutions collaborating together. But another thing is also how do we work with our financial sector? 9 out of 10 times funding or financing smallholder farmers is extremely risky. There's also often a lack of knowledge and insights into the agriculture sector. So we have also from our end been working with financial institutions on setting up guarantee schemes, working with governments, DFIs, financial institutions, setting up guarantee schemes, increasing insights and knowledge into specific value chains, and working on mitigating the risk within the value chains themselves by aggregating farmers, etc., structuring markets to make it more attractive. So it's literally a basket of solutions that can be applicable.
I think if I can just add a few things. One, I think smallholder farming, we need to really help educate smallholder farmers, because I think if they bet on single crops, it's very risky, right? That's why, it's interesting, to hear with, some of the companies like Arise that they try to encourage their smallholder farmer to invest in a couple of cows because of, I mentioned before, because of the daily cash. So how do you also help them to diversify? The other element, and this is going to be the big challenge, is how do we make sure that those smallholder farmer will have access to credit, system? And I think that today really cut off that. And if we want to transform agriculture, we need to give them access to grants, but also to loans, so blended finance. That's a big part of the work that we have to do. Last, we're working a lot with educating female farmers, right? And we're trying to push female farming. And what we have seen, in particular in dairy farming, that, sorry to say that, and I'm a man and probably that's why I can say it, but they're much more reliable partners. They take much more care of the cattle. They are much more productive when it comes to the yield. So the reliability is higher. So how do we have programs in Morocco, we have programs in Nigeria, for example. How do we also really make sure that we educate the right person, right? Because if we educate the male farmer that in the end doesn't really take care, but it's his wife doing it, it's also a bit of a lost impact. So you really have to deeply understand who is really doing what and then transform the system.
So it's money time. So there are a few hands raised. I will not be able to ask all, so maybe we can run an auction or... No. Who is paying the most for a question? Who is the most excited about his or her question? Okay, I see here. I'm sorry, but she was so dynamic. We take 2 questions.
Okay, thank you so much. I think I have 2 questions, but Christian has answered one. Okay, I should stand up?
Yes.
Okay, thank you so much. My name is Christiana, I'm a Nigerian. So my first question is about gender, which I think Christian has answered partially. I schooled in Benue State in Nigeria, where females are known to be the farmers in Benue State. So I noticed when they are pregnant, they still have the energy to go to farm, but their husband doesn't really support them, except their children. So since you spoke about educating female, what about educating male in that context? Also, in terms of security, there's always a recurrent clash between farmers in Benue State and the cow rearers. So are there programs that brings awareness to both the farmers and also those rearing cows, so that food system can be sustainable, most especially in communities like Benue State? Thank you.
So how do you teach husband to be decent?
Honestly, I think it's a very, very good point. In Northern Africa, we do things, right? So we educate female farmers, but we also educate the male farmers. Separate, but I think it's topics that we try to address. I think in Nigeria is something that we probably also have to address. I need to check with the team, so I can't answer you, but I think it's a very important point that we do it. Now in Nigeria, when it comes to dairy farming, one of the big challenge today that we know in the north is that most of the dairy cattle is nomad farming, right? I mean, it's farmers that move all the time from one field to the other. And Pastoralist, okay, sorry. So I think for us that's very complicated because you need to collect the milk, right? And what we're trying to do as part of the education programs is, to make the farmers settle. Because the yield is better, of course you need to but then it's a system approach, right? It's a system approach to feed, it's a system approach to water, because otherwise you're not getting the yields. And I need to have a supply chain to get the milk fresh. Milk doesn't hold for 48 hours at 35 degrees, right? So if I don't do that, it's very difficult to get kind of this milk to be used for the industry. Then maybe they can use it for themselves, they can use it maybe in a village where they pass, but it's very difficult. So we also have to change farming practice to really, make sure, and then some of those conflicts we believe will also obviously go away, but you need to develop the farming different for dairy farming to work.
I think briefly, last question.
Briefly, actually, I had 2 questions. Thank you for answering the question about women in agriculture. And the second question is related to a little farmer. You were talking about this, and I don't know if you have maybe a program or strategy for cooperation with African countries, particularly in Morocco, especially as we are suffering from water stress for more than 7 years now. Thank you.
So it's one of the big topics that we're working on, and we can only solve that together. So we have done a huge water stress study to understand basically in which areas, also predicting over the next 10 years, 20 years, water will be more scarce, where dairy farming will still be possible, and what it will take to really ensure that dairy farming is there, because it's so embedded right in the culture and is one of the critical food supplies. So we have that, and for me that's part of, when we talk about regenerative agriculture, water resilience is part of that, water access is part of that, and how you do it. And that's also why it's so important to work, for example, on the yield of the cow, right? Because a cow that gives, let's say, 20 liters of milk doesn't need the same water per liter of milk than a cow that gives only 8 liters of milk. So this transformation is critical. We have a program here that is touching roughly 8,000 farmers, which is called Libeladi, where we're doing education, where we work on yield, where we work on genetics with the farmers. And this is something which we're now looking for partners to scale it, because this has been paid by funds, Ecosystem Fund, GIZ, the German institution has co-invested with us. But if you want to scale it, you need partners, right? And this is not just for us, I think it's for the overall industry, because you need to scale it to 50,000, 100,000, 200,000 farmers. That's one of the topics which we're basically knocking on a lot of doors, because we're not a bank, right? We're a company, so we can organize things, we can guarantee for the offtake, but we cannot finance the system change of farmers that once you have transitioned them is going to be profitable for the farmers. But the transition, we need to find a measure of loans and grants, blended finance, to really, drive the transition.
Yeah.
Sorry, thank you very much. For the water stress, I think the climate change has both negative and positive things. Maybe after 7 years, there will be flood for the coming 4 years, 5 years. You never know. But we have to model properly the early warning system in a proper way, so that we have to capture that amount of water that comes in flooding in some other time. So preparedness is a very important way out for this to happen. So we see climate change not only in terms of drought, but we also see climate change in terms of flooding. So we have to capture every single liter of water that comes during the floody season and make it usable for the coming other drought season that comes in. I think that kind of modeling is very important.
Water irrigation system is very critical, using technology for that, right? You need much less water than today is often used, because a lot of water is wasted. Soil health and the ability to capture water. There's a lot of topics that you need to address.
Yeah, and modeling is critical. It's, as you said, forecasting. Jennifer?
Yes,
Sure.
The final comment. So, very good points, and I think we're on a learning journey and adapting our programs as well. So as AGRA, we've also included now irrigation into our 5-year work plan, and working with actors to ensure that we implement irrigation schemes. That one. I love the question about gender, and I think we can learn from countries like Rwanda. First of all, to the white paper, let's add gender also. Gender parity as a critical topic, because it has to go beyond talking to women, it's talking to everybody, but having the hard targets and the numbers there. If we cannot come up with 40%, 50% women engagement, then we are not even interested as AGRA.
Great. Last question, and
yes,
then
I think my question may help also in the conclusion. My question is to the African French Foundation. How can this foundation be used as a catalyzer also to bring much more also interest from European Union? Africa is a big continent. I think also is still also bigger than French, of course. But I think there is much more resources, much more programs also from the European Union perspective that can help all these programs. So is there a perspective to develop that from your side?
Okay.
Go ahead. No, it's yours.
Okay. Yes, we have a lot of perspective. So we had 13 young leaders for this cohort who have created the manifest to work with the different fields. So me, I'm as an engineer in food industry. We have idea to develop with other partners, smallholders, and company to put this paper to become a reality, especially on transformation, especially on regenerative crops. We have also other actors here. I mean, it's not here, but also working on the fertilizer side. So we know that to be able to unlock and have the action we have there, we need to have the public and also the private sector together. And we have actors from both sides who are working on a clear action plan to be able to develop. We also think about ourselves on the financing side, create a fund to be able to support the initiative we have put in the paper. So yes, we work together with the private sector, with the support of NASHWAT, to touch mainly the French government first, and also a local government to help us to put in place the politics to help to unlock some of the barrier. Because for her, it's really important that it is not just a paper, but it's transforming reality in real project who will have an impact to our communities.
But I think it's also what the meeting at 3 on Atlas, the new lab, will be about. It's basically how do we elevate the African agri-food system as a top priority for everyone, including EU and donors, and how do we make sure also that the definitions of what sustainable agriculture is not actually a bottleneck to cooperation, investments, and so on. And I think I will speak in your name, Nashwat, in the French-African Foundation. I think what the foundation is mostly trying to do, and that's why also as partners we are very excited about what the foundation is doing, is to build a different narrative between Europe and France in particular, and Africa, a narrative that is much more positive, opportunity-driven, collaboration, looking forward, entrepreneurship, youth, and not the historic narrative, which tends to be a bit negative. So I think it's also a way to do what you want. So let me thank all the participants. You still can ask, those who didn't have the time to ask questions, they are available whole day for you. So you can ask questions. I'd like to thank also Nashwat for organizing this. And I hope you'll have a great day. And actually, I invite you to join the 3 p.m. session on Atlas.